What can explain such a gap in the trajectories of Lafreniere and Kako? Since the Habs have a lot of youngsters coming in, might be good to explain how long it takes and why it sometimes doesn't work for such highly regarded prospects.
Yeah, good question, Guillaume. And I think actually the two players that you bring up are a perfect example of what's going on here. Is we all need to collectively just inhale and exhale and give players time. Like Kako could explode next year. He's not that old. It's like there's not necessarily a big difference between Lafreniere and Kako. It's admittedly concerning that Kako has not taken off yet, and maybe his ceiling is lower than it was once believed to be. But Lafreniere, like, it's not as if Lafreniere has blown up into a superstar level talent. He's putting up like really decent secondary scoring numbers on that team. Like, that's kind of what he's like, sort of like a top 6 level guy with, hovering around 60 odd points or something this season. We've brought up Byfield all the time, and it's just what those two guys demonstrate is that you need time, and sometimes you need the context of the team. Like, if Slav were playing for the Kings or the Rangers, would he be playing on the top line today? Probably not. No. And would he have had the explosion he had if he wasn't playing on the top line? Probably not. Probably would have taken him more time playing further down the lineup, playing with, less quality teammates. And so there's always context to prospects. And it's just like, I think there was an era of NHL prospects, the McDavid, Matthews time, that made it. And just look at Bedard. Like, Bedard's been really good this season, but it's not as if he's lighting the world on fire. Yes, he's producing a lot of points, but he's learning a lot. He's having a lot of trouble in his own end. It's not an easy league to come into as an 18-year-old anymore. Yes, it's a younger league, but that step from junior to the NHL has almost never been higher, because it's a more skilled league. It's really, really tough. And so the fact that Matthews was able to come in as easily as he did, McDavid, same thing, even Sid back in the day, there was this notion that if you're a top 3 pick, then you should be dominating in the NHL, or should at least be producing in the NHL right away. And it's just not the case anymore. It's just not true. So
look at Jack Hughes.
Yeah,
is not.
There's lots of examples, and Lafreniere and Kako are two of them. And maybe Kako won't pan out, but I think the overarching lesson here is that don't expect your top 3 picks to instantly step into an NHL lineup and produce. It's just not reality anymore. It's not real.
Yeah.
And so,
the Rangers needed to get more from those two high draft picks. They had them on bridge contracts in their second deal and hoping to extract value out of that. So I think that putting Lafreniere with Panarin was really what the doctor ordered. But how many young up and coming players and budding stars have the luxury of being put on Panarin's line in the NHL? Very few of them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good on Lafreniere.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, I got one here.
Sure.
This is a quick one. So, hi guys. I don't believe this is from Joel. I don't believe there's a coincidence that Habs Scouting has unearthed more hidden gems since they've hired Chris Boucher and his analytics team. Do we know how much, if at all, Trevor Timmins was or was not using analytics in his scouting process? Marc-Antoine?
Yeah, it's he was, but certainly not up to that level. So Chris Boucher has brought the fact that he's there. He's been there now for a couple of years, and he's developing his department. There's more of a sense of permanence when it comes to analytics, and when that wasn't there before. Let's remember that Marc Bergevin used to say, "Well, it's a tool, but it's not the end all," and we don't want to give too much credit or importance to those numbers. We take them into account, but it's not as significant. And when it comes to analytics, the people who would feed the Canadians with those numbers, it changed a lot from one year to another. They would go from one outlet to another, and they would sometimes try to have their own analytics and then move on to another project a year after. So when you don't have that consistency, you cannot embark on a project or say, well, we're going to build a database. We're going to say, well, we want these are the things that we're looking through the numbers that we're going to investigate in our drafting process. So this is one of the things that Chris Boucher is able to bring to the Canadiens, and whether Trevor Timmins believed in that or not, he never had like that systematic tool that would feed him over and over. And as the years go by, as they accumulate data, it's going to get more precise and it's going to get more true. It's going to be better put in context. All of those things. So I think that I might be mistaken, but my belief is that Timmins, to a certain extent, thought the same way as Bergevin, saying, we take those into account, but it's not the end all. And let's not forget also that for most of Timmins' tenure in Montreal, it was extremely difficult, and it still is to a certain extent to this day. It was extremely difficult to talk apples to apples when it came to prospects that were considered for the draft, because they were coming from all over the place and trying to find ways to put them in the same balance and understand what their production means from one league to another was extremely difficult. It still is, but they're bridging that gap right now, and it's not something that was accessible to the same extent to Trevor Timmins, basically because the Canadiens started working on that much later than a lot of the teams.
Well, what I would add to that is that it's all well and good that Trevor Timmins said he took that into account. I know he said that, but you can't properly take it into account if you don't have someone around to interpret that data, which the Canadiens did not have. The Canadiens did not have qualified people to interpret all the data coming in and distill it and feed it to the scouting department in a way that they could understand it. Like in a way that they could get value out of it, I should say, not understand it, but find value in it. That's what Chris Boucher and his team does now. Like they actually can look at a player, refer to the data, and say, this data says that this player will do this thing in this situation more often than not. He is a play driving winger who wins his board battles, for instance, something like that. Whereas, I don't think Trevor Timmins had that level of sophistication. They had access to the data, absolutely, and they subscribed to services. They didn't ignore analytics, but they didn't embrace it to a level that was significant enough to have the most important part of analytics, which is the people to translate analytics into hockey speak, which is what Chris Boucher basically is paid to do. So it's, they used it, but they didn't use it to its full potential. And we'll see we don't know what the impact is yet of Chris Boucher's work, but for sure there's some encouraging signs. And the most encouraging sign is that the current scouting department, which includes Martin Lapointe, who worked under Trevor Timmins, but they have embraced having Chris Boucher at the table with them. You just have to watch the Canadiens behind the scenes draft footage the last 2 years. Chris Boucher is talking at the table. He's making points. He's being listened to. That is a change for sure from the Trevor Timmins time. No doubt.
Thank goodness.
Yes, absolutely.